you clicked on this video, you might have that stinky little keyboard ready to absolutely blast me in the comments for even trying to compare these two cameras. And I get it, it's not exactly an apples to apples comparison, so right off the bat, let's just address the differences between the Fuji X100VI and the Lumix S9, and then we'll get into which camera I think is the best daily carry.
This video is sponsored by Editor's Keys. More on them when you're least expecting it.
Here's the glaring differences from my perspective. The first one is obviously the sensor size. So the Fuji is APS-C 40 megapixels, pretty crazy, and the Lumix is full frame at 24 megapixels. Both plenty of resolution, and you can get great images with either, but I figured people would want to talk about those specs first. The second biggest difference is the lens. So the Fuji has a non-removable lens. What you see is what you get. It's a prime, it's beautiful, but it's one lens. Whereas the Lumix has an L mount, it's interchangeable. You can put whatever L mount glass or vintage glass with an adapter onto this camera. Basically with the Lumix, the options are limitless, which can be kind of limiting. There's something about just having a set lens on a camera where you don't even get to think about that decision. It's made for you, so you just have to go create. That all comes down to subjectivity and how you like to shoot, but it is a huge difference. The X100VI has a tilt screen, and the Lumix has a flip out screen that does not tilt at all. Kind of a bummer for me, but it's there. Another difference that I don't see a lot of people talking about is the Fuji X100VI has a ND filter in the camera. I set it to a custom button and you can use it in photo and video, which is pretty freaking insane. You can essentially just take this little pocket camera out and get incredible photos and videos and not carry a ton of filters with you. I want built-in NDs in small cameras so bad, and I love that the X100VI has that. The Lumix does not. And probably the biggest difference and the hardest thing to deal with these two cameras is the X100VI has an optical and digital viewfinder that you can swap between, which is pretty rad. The Lumix S9 has no viewfinder at all, and I constantly find myself putting the camera up to my face, expecting a viewfinder, and it's just the screen. And it's a flip screen, it's not even a tilt screen. I think a tilt screen would have been better on the S9 personally, or the tilt flip, they have it on the GH7, so I don't know what Lumix is thinking with that, but it's a huge difference and a deal breaker for a lot of people. So now we're gonna take a moment of silence for those who are gonna leave who can't deal with that. Okay, let's continue. So why are we even talking about this comparison in the first place? Well, if you've seen any of my recent videos, I have been on the hunt for the perfect daily dad camera to document my son's life. Me and my wife had a kid a few months ago, and I wanted to be able to take video and photo. I just want the camera on me pretty much all the time to document my son's life. It's like our family camera, essentially, is what I've been looking for. And what's interesting about both the Fuji and the Lumix is they're kind of marketed as pocket photo cameras, but they both have really impressive video specs. For example, the S9 has incredible in-body image stabilization, 10-bit 6K open gate video up to 30 frames per second with zero crop, and it does 4K up to 30 frames per second. The X100VI has built-in image stabilization as well, 10-bit 6K video up to 30p with a crop, 4K up to 60 frames per second, and some high-definition slow-motion modes that I will never use. Here's what I've noticed after shooting video on the X100VI. The prime lens on the camera is nice, but for video specifically, it feels very limiting for some reason. The autofocus is okay, it's not amazing. I don't really trust it, especially in like high movement situations, but it is there if you need it. It's got face tracking. It just doesn't feel like a video camera, and I don't think it's supposed to feel like a video camera, but to me, the S9 just feels so much more enjoyable to use for video specifically. Maybe it's the incredible image stabilization, the open gate 6K full frame footage, the built-in LUT features so I don't have to color grade, or maybe it's this insane lens that I found before it sadly got discontinued. I found this 7 Artisans 35mm f1.4. I swear it is like my favorite lens right now, and it fits perfectly on the Lumix S9. It's not quite pancake, but it's pretty small and great for daily use, although it is a little heavy, so the camera's a little front heavy. But both cameras on paper have incredible video specs, but after real world use, I just absolutely prefer the S9. It just feels great for video. The flip screen is nice if you're trying to document yourself or what you're doing with your family. It's definitely a con for photo, but for video, the S9 is awesome. I think it punches way above its price tag and its weight class, and I'm super excited that I have this camera.
Editor's Keys makes awesome keyboards that has your favorite editing program's hotkeys blasted right onto the keyboard keyboard itself. You tired of forgetting how to ripple delete all that space in your timeline? Take your little dome, point it down at the keyboard. Oh, there's the spot right there. I don't have to dig through menus anymore. I'm using the new DaVinci Resolve wireless backlit keyboard that has incredible build quality. Like that company that develops the Fruit or whatever, I think this is genuinely better build quality than that. My favorite feature of this keyboard is that I can connect up to 3 Bluetooth devices at once. Oh, hold on, I'm getting a call. Yes, they have keyboards for Resolve, Premiere, Final Cut, and a bunch of audio programs like Logic. If you make music, you get the point. So click that cute little link in the description to snag a brand new keyboard that will actually improve your workflow, and it looks really cool. You guys clicking that link in the description is a huge support to me, so at the very least, just go check it out. It would mean the absolute world to me. Thank you, Editor's Keys, for partnering with me on this video. Now back to the X100VI and Lumix S9 shenanigans.
Nice job! Now, before we dive deep into the photography side of things, I wanted to dedicate an entire chapter of this video to those brave women and men in our country who choose to shoot JPEG and .mov despite the insults society throws at us. Stay strong, brothers and sisters. And this chapter is where things get pretty muddy, so put your boots on. First, let's talk about the Fujifilm simulations. Really quick, if you don't know what I'm talking about with simulations, all I'm talking about is the fact that you can bake in color grades and presets into your JPEG files if you don't want to edit your photos or videos after the fact. If you just want to rip them straight off the camera, send them to your phone, that's what I'm calling a simulation. So let's talk about Fuji's film simulations first. The very first point I want to make is that it's just tried and true. Fuji has their whole system laid out. They've been doing this for years and years. There's a massive community built around Fuji simulations, hashtag FujiJuice. Fuji X Weekly is a platform where you can just download their app or go to their website, choose one of their beautiful simulations, and set up that recipe inside your camera using one of the built-in simulations from Fuji. So you start with one of the stock ones that Fuji gives you, but you make adjustments based on the recipe from Fuji X Weekly, or just come up with your own, and you can get absolutely incredible results from a huge variety of styles. I did this in my 4th of July video with the X100VI. I did a 1970s profile that was really cool, and I love how those photos turned out, and it was all in camera, no editing in post. The main benefit of Fuji is because it's tried and true, it's a lot more simple for beginners. They can just look at a recipe, dial it in the camera, and set it and forget it. It's not that hard to figure out, so I think it's more approachable for beginners, but it can still be very advanced for those of us who have been shooting for a lot longer, and we like to tweak the individual hue levels and white balance and all that. It just feels a lot more approachable in general. I think most of us know you can bake that into your photos, but you can also bake this directly into Fuji's video settings as well if you don't want to color grade after. Or if you just want to do slight tweaks after, you can already bake in a style into the camera, rip it straight off the SD card, and it can look really good. What about Lumix? Well, they've recently, with this S9 camera, announced Lumix Lab, which is basically their version of Fuji film simulations. Lumix Lab is a new concept and a new app that Lumix developed where you can essentially take some photos on your S9 or your other Lumix cameras, transfer them to Lumix Lab. You can edit the photos and create presets and export them as LUTs. LUTs are more commonly known as color grading presets for video files, but Lumix is trying to make LUTs the new meta moving forward. So you make your own LUTs and then you can directly transfer them from your Lumix Lab app directly to your camera and start shooting with that preset baked into your photos or your video. You can probably tell just from what I said that this is a more complicated process. Kind of. If you're well versed with LUTs, color grading, making presets, it's probably not that hard for you. But if you're a beginner, I think this is less approachable. It's more complicated, but I love what Lumix is doing. They're trying to establish a new foundation for creating photo and video presets. So I think after a couple years, when this gets more developed and more common, I think a lot of people are going to be super stoked as long as Lumix continues to invest in this and try to create a community around it. That's going to come from us too, us creators, but I think if we can do that, I think LUTs is kind of the future of this stuff. We'll see. And you can still further customize things in your camera. So on the S9, you can add different levels of grain that look really nice. You can add color noise at varying levels if you want. You can adjust the saturation, the color, the tones in the camera. So you can further adjust on the fly if you desire. You can treat it simple like Fujifilm simulation, or you can go balls to the wall with Lumix Lab. And this, ladies and gentlemen, is why it is so hard for me to pick a winner in this category, because the two concepts, although they kind of go for the same result, are completely different processes. So all I can say is it's up to how you want to shoot. Do you want it to be more complicated and have a learning curve but eventually get exactly what you want? Or do you want something that's a little more simple but looks amazing out of the box pretty much no matter what? Choice is yours, kid. Okay, now we can talk about the photo shooting experience on either of these cameras really quick. The X100 is just simple. What you see is what you get. You get one lens, one focal length. It forces you to just be creative with your decisions, and it's truly a pocketable camera. And with the S9, you get the choice of lenses. You can find weird vintage lenses or put normal Panasonic lenses on it, Sigma L mount lenses. You have tons of options. And if you want just something simple with great autofocus, go with the Panasonic 35mm 1.8. Shout out to my friend Kevin, who I convinced to buy that setup. So with photography, the X100VI, in my book, just wins in terms of the photo shooting experience. It has such a premium build quality, but very lightweight still. It's got the viewfinder. It has a tilt screen. It just shoots nice photos, and it's really fun to use and fits in your pocket. But at the end of the day, I prefer the photos from the S9. Maybe it's the magical lens that I stumbled upon that's now discontinued, but all I can say is the X100VI is a better shooting experience, but I prefer the results of the S9. It's weird. They're both great. So here we are, chapter 5. Which camera is actually best? Well, I don't think I can just pick one that's objectively best, because that's not how art works, but I can try to tell you which camera might be best for different kinds of people and shooters. I think the X100VI is for people who are photography experience purists. It's got the retro, amazing build quality. It has the viewfinder. It has high resolution raw photos, but the amazing film simulations if you want them. And at the same time, it's somehow still better for beginners. The S9 is for people who want a pretty well-rounded daily photo video camera who aren't afraid to tackle a learning curve and figure out how to use this camera best for their experience. And you'll find yourself spending time researching what lens is gonna best suit your needs, and full-frame lenses aren't usually cheap. And because you're using full frame lenses, this camera is not really pocketable. Sigma makes some smaller lenses. There's kind of some weird random ones out there on B&H, but I'm still waiting for either Sigma or Panasonic or somebody to actually make pancake lenses that aren't f8 or f5.6 that work on this full frame L mount. After that, it's game over. In conclusion, this camera comparison is very difficult. It's not just a black and white, one's better, one's not, and I just had to test them both to see which one was for me, and I chose to stick with the S9. Hope you guys enjoyed this video. Text me when you get home so I know you're safe, and watch out for deer. I saw one driving yesterday on a rampage. You guys are loved. I'll see you in the next video. Bye.